Hi, my name is Caitlyn Seibert. I'm here with the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Our project for this semester is looking at the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program, which from this point on will be referred to as MFOS. Today is March 5th, 2020, and I am here with Stephanie Rolón Rodríguez. Hi, Stephanie.
Hey.
So to start us off, I was hoping you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up, why you decided to go to UF, what you studied while you were at UF.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I am originally from Puerto Rico. I was born there in Bayamón. I was there for about 9 years. And then my parents decided to move to the States. So we moved to Sanford, Florida, my little, what I still call home now, and was there for a very long time. My parents are in Mount Dora now, but I decided to go to University of Florida. My favorite teacher was an alum, and I thought she was the coolest thing ever. And every time she would talk about it, it just seemed like such a cool experience, such a good place to be. Neither of my parents got to finish college, and college in Puerto Rico is very different. It's like very small, and here's huge. So that was really exciting to me. And then when I got to University of Florida, I thought I was going to do biology. But then I fell in love with health science, and I ended up doing a public health track with that. So that's what I did at the University of Florida.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you're in the medical field right now, correct?
I am, yes.
So what exactly do you do?
Yeah. So I am a second year family medicine resident. So for those that don't know too much about the medical, it's just a long school, like you're in school forever. So I really like school. But so you do med school. I graduated in 2019, and then you have to pick kind of what you want to specialize in. So family medicine was that for me. So I'm almost done with my second year, which is crazy because it's just 3 years. So I'm almost a big kid now. And then currently I'm in rural medicine. So get to be kind of in a rural area in Utah, and get to see kind of how the docs here work, and they do everything. So it's really cool to be here.
So just jumping right into the more UF-based questions, how has your view of higher education changed since you attended UF?
Since I attended UF? That's a really good question. I think I've, throughout the years, things have changed. So at the beginning, higher education, like when I first went to University of Florida, was such a privilege for me. It was not an expectation, although my mom would probably say different. And it was just a privilege. It was so cool. I got to go to this institution. And I think throughout the years there, I saw kind of the disparities of who gets to go and who doesn't, and what higher education means later on. So I think in that sense, I still think of it as a privilege because it's so cool. And I'm trying to get out of that mentality, but I think that it's a place where you not only learn what you want to do in the future, because there's so many, things that you can explore, but also a place where you build those lifelong relationships, build, how to be outside of your home, how to do laundry, it's just all these things that, you get to live outside of home and get to learn all those practical things that you need for the rest of life. And again, lifelong friendships and mentorship. So that's kind of what I think about it.
Speaking of your mom, can we discuss a bit about how your family dealt with the application process when you were going through it to go to school here, and maybe if they helped you at all with the grad school process?
So for school at the beginning, when I started applying for colleges, I only applied to 2 places. I was either going to get to University of Florida, or I was going to go to UCF, or go to, because I'm from the Orlando area, or I was going to go to community school, do 2 years, and then transfer. So my mom is an expert Googler. She doesn't, even if she doesn't know, she will try to find out. So she did, like, once we got in and we were trying to like figure out the whole how to pay for it, she was really like, to this day, I feel like we both kind of were like, what is a FAFSA? Like, okay, what is that? Okay, let's Google, let's do it this way. So she was a big part, even if she didn't know, she was such a strong part in kind of just helping me through it, because I was lost, she was lost. And we were both very excited when I got in and got to do the MFOS program. But grad school is a little different. So she didn't know much about that. And at that point, I started talking to more like people that had gone through it, or mentors that I had at the University of Florida. So that part she wasn't very involved with, just because, but still she would Google away and try to help me out any way that she could. So.
Yeah, it's really nice.
She was great. Yeah, she was great. We were both lost. So,
so obviously you're a first generation student going into undergrad. You still have that first gen identity when you go to graduate school and you're in med school and going through all of that. So what does it mean for you to be a first generation college student?
Yeah. Honestly, the quick way to say it, it means I put my family on my back, and I said, there's no barriers that I'm going to let get in my way to do what I want to do. And I did have a lot of those things. I think being first generation is, what's it called? Making that path for people behind you and never forgetting to look back. Because I feel like a lot of people, they do all these things, it's awesome, but they forget to look back and be like, look, there's people that are still struggling with this. Like, what can I do to help them out? So I would say, yeah, just putting my family on my back and not looking back. Like in Spanish, they say like, pa'lante, pa' atrás, ni pa' coger impulso. So like, you have to go forward. You don't look back, even if you have to like use it to, if you need it for impulse. So
that's great. So going back a little bit, you mentioned during the application process, you and your mom were a little bit concerned about having to pay for it. This is obviously like, equity is very much a problem when it comes to higher education. So what was your experience like when you first received the letter from MFOS, or it was probably an email from MFOS saying that you were one of their students?
Yeah. So back in the day, it was still a letter. I found out on email about getting into UF, but the letter for MFOS came. I thought it was fake, to be honest. I like saw the letter and I was reading it, and like my mom read it, and my mom's English wasn't great, but she was working through it. So we were both like looking at it, and I was like, is this a scholarship? Like, is this just a program? Like, what do I have to do for this? And we like both looked at each other and we were like, I think it's a full ride. And we started jumping and like laughing hysterically because we were like, what is this? Is this fake? It was a day that I can't even explain. Like, to this day, it's something that I go back to, and just like every little celebration in my life really started. I mean, it started before, right? But that really was kind of the key point of like, oh my gosh, I can afford college. Like, I got into UF. I had a friend the year before that actually didn't get to go because he was like, I don't know how I can afford it. And so he ended up, doing a path that was right for him. So I was very much scared about, thinking about loans and all that stuff. So that day was fantastic. Still have to pinch myself.
I can imagine it was probably one of the top 5 days of your life, probably, right?
Yeah. I was like, wait, what? So it was great.
Your mom seems really, really supportive. So what was it like talking about college when you were growing up? I feel like from what you've said thus far, she probably really encouraged it, correct?
Yeah, I think, a lot of times we didn't talk about specifically college. she always talked about what she wanted to do, what happened and how she had to like drop out because of money issues. And so we always talked about that. We never said, oh, Stephanie, you're going to college, right? But she always, in high school, she, it could have been that I could have worked, I looking for a job and like helped her out, but she always said my education came first. And so if she had to, whatever she had to do overtime or anything to, provide and to do whatever she needed to do, she would do. So then I could go to school without worrying about that, and could get involved and do the things that I really, like to do in school. So she always kind of pushed me to be better and wanted me to get a good education. We never talked about college, but I think the moment where I became a junior, then she was like, okay, this is happening. How do we do it?
On with it. Let's go. Come on.
Exactly. Like, how do I do this? I don't know, Google. Okay. I think this is what we have to do. So we definitely went through that process together.
Off of that, you have guidance counselors in high school, but it's a little bit different once you come here. The guidance counselors in high school, they definitely could help you with the application process if you went to them. But here with MFOS, it's a different kind of mentorship. Mm-hmm. So can you talk to me a bit about your experience just like with the program?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the coolest part about it was because, you thought about, okay, it pays for my school, and it helps for me to like live and eat and all these things. But it didn't only do that, right? It gave you that mentor, something that I went into as well after, because I thought that was nice, having just that person of contact to be like, look, I'm lost, like help, who do I ask? And then having those financial classes and just knowing that, at any point you could go and you could email Leslie, like she was always so like available. And so I think it just provided such a good start for a place that I was very scared of. A lot of people say, oh, Stephanie, you're so outgoing. I really struggled the first 2 years, not because MFOS wasn't awesome, because it was, but it was just because I was trying to find myself in this big school, and who I would be. And my parents didn't understand it. And I would freak out and they'd be freaking out that I was going to drop out of college. And I was like, no, I just need, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So it was always nice to have that point of person to go to. And I ended up developing some of the best relationships I've, to this day I have through MFOS.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking through my questions.
No, you're fine. I'm like, did I answer that right?
No, you did. You answered it really well. Okay. So you struggled your first 2 years, but I'm assuming you did actually find a sort of community that you felt you fit in with really well here at UF. What was it like when you found them, and how did that change the remaining 2 years that you were here?
Yeah. So I always found, like some of the people, like I've met a lot of people through the MFOS, like when we had, those events, and we kind of I tried to like gravitate to some people and be like, hi, there's someone coming in through the door. Sorry. And, I think one of the biggest things that happened to me, so I became an MFOS mentor my second year. And that's an opportunity that all of us do that have. I met my best friend through MFOS. To this day, we're still best friends, and she's also my sorority sister. But I would say that where I found my community was, so I was doing an interview for MFOS mentors with Anthony DeSantis. And at that point, he was the vice president of the, hopefully associate vice president, making sure that I don't say that wrong, of the Dean of Students office. And that day we were talking and we really just hit it off. He was telling me about the DOS and how, how they were looking for students and I could work and stuff like that. And I would honestly say that's where I found my community. I started working at the DOS. I worked there even after I graduated. They they had a position that they needed to fill, and I worked there for a year before I decided to apply to med school. But that's really where I found my niche. Those were my people, the people that worked there, and we would hang out. And then after that, I think I came to grips with everything and ended up, kind of branching out from there.
While you were,
no, I thought someone walked behind me and I was going crazy.
So I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So you obviously made friends through the MFOS program, but I'm assuming you also had friends outside of it who weren't first generation students. What was your experience like in comparison to theirs?
Yeah. I think a lot of them already knew what they wanted to do. A lot of them had, gone through these rigorous things in high school and had all these already like mentorships. Like, so when I started thinking about medicine, there was a lot of them that already had, shadowing opportunities. And I worked with my dad because he did that. And they already had this almost advantage. Unfortunately, I think there was a lot of things that MFOS could, provided at the end of the day. So I didn't feel like I was behind, but it did bring that sense of, wow, like that's so different. Like that wasn't my experience. And then kind of realizing what other people's experiences were that, were very different than mine. But at the end of the day, we were in the same classes and we were both striving. So I tried to put that back in the back of my head.
Did you have any expectations when you came to UF, and were they met, or did you find that it was different from what you had imagined?
Yeah, I think that everything was met and even went above and beyond. I didn't know what to expect. I remember crying the first day my mom dropped me off at at the dorm. And I was thinking, okay, I have no idea what's about to go on. Like, this is nothing like what I've ever experienced before. But I think that, learning the different areas in campus and getting to know people and kind of figuring out, what do I want to do with the rest of my life and what do I want to get involved with? Because I think I always thought, there was all these people getting involved, and I was super involved in high school, but I was so scared at UF because I went to a very small high school and this was a huge, I felt like a little ant in this like big place. And I'm making sure I don't forget to answer the actual question. But I think that it's just such a magnificent place. And I'm sorry, my words are escaping me, but the people that I met, and once I opened myself to that, to knowing that there was people there that would catch me when I fell and I could really trust them, I think that's when things really got much better for me. But at the beginning, it was hard to trust that process. You almost feel like imposter syndrome, and I still struggle with that. It's a very real thing. But yeah, it took a while, and here we are, and I love that place. I feel like every time I go to Florida, I want to go to the University of Florida just to see the campus and smell the gator air.
Yes, the swampy air.
Swampy air, yes.
If you wouldn't mind, could you elaborate a bit on your experience with imposter syndrome? We've discussed it a lot. It's a problem that a lot of first-generation students have. So I'd love to hear your experience with it.
Of course, yeah. I think that there's different levels of, not levels, but I think there's different aspects of your life that you feel like an imposter from, when I went to UF and I felt like, oh my gosh, because a lot of people, there was this one comment in high school that a person told me when they didn't get in, they were like, oh, you got in because you're Hispanic. And I was like, I'm second in my class and I play sports and I do all these things. Like, I think I deserve this, but that very much stuck with me because, it was like the whole thing, like, did I get in on my own merit or did I not? And then I got there. And when I started working, I loved it. And then I started thinking about med school, and I met with a pre-med counselor, which is a very heartbreaking thing to do. So then I didn't go to them anymore. But, they always said, I don't think that you have the grades to do it. Like, you have to do this, this, and that. And it always just felt like there was an obstacle that I had to go through. Right. And it just seemed so much easier for some people. They had already this knowledge of like, oh, I worked at my dad's clinic and I really enjoyed this. And this is why I want to go into medicine. And I was like, I think this is cool. It will challenge my mind. When I first started thinking about it. And then when I then graduated and worked for a year, that was really scary because that's when I started struggling with standardized testing. And I said, oh my gosh, like, this is not where I need to be. Like, I'm not going to succeed. And then I got in and I did a bridge program. So it's a program where you do a master's first, the first year. It's like a year that you do some of the med school classes. And then if you pass those, then you get an automatic admission to the first year class the next year. So having to go through that process, I also said, oh my gosh, maybe I'm not meant for medicine. Things just come so easily for some other people and it doesn't for me. So every step through the process, I dealt with some imposter syndrome. It just kind of, just shifted with me and whatever I was doing. And even to this day, to be honest, I talk about it with not only Hispanic, not only as a woman, because as a woman in medicine, that's just another, that's another step to talk about. That's a whole nother story, but the intersectionality of being a woman of color in medicine and getting that respect and, going through that and explaining people how to say my last name and saying that they need to use both because that's my identity. And I'm not Dr. Rodriguez, I'm Dr. Rolón Rodríguez, and please respect that. There's a lot of that going on, but every day I battle it because I'm here, I'm still here, I'm living my dream. And, every time I see one of my patients that I've made a difference, that kind of brings me forward and really brings some light into, okay, I'm not an imposter, but I have to tell that to myself every day. And there are days that are worse than others, so.
On that note, I really like the point you brought up about being a woman of color in your field. I have a question here about how you see your first gen identity in relation to all of the other identities you have: race, nationality, ethnicity, gender. How does it all play together for you?
Yeah. I think at the beginning, honestly, it makes you feel like you're starting from scratch. Almost. It's kind of that equity kind of image where, it's not about equality because everyone's, depending on your height. I don't know if you've ever seen that picture, but depending on your height, like it's not equitable because you can't still get through. Right. And so it feels like that. It feels like you're kind of starting from here and there's this big fence in front of you and you're like, okay, how do I get through here? I never really saw a lot of people that looked like me in this field. And I think that was a big thing for me. I ended up, through the years, I've ended up realizing why I wanted to go into medicine. And it was because I didn't see a lot of women of color like me that did that. And I was like, wow, like, I think that was a hard part for me too. I was like, oh, well, I don't see anyone like me. So how could I succeed? Right. But then getting through that fear, and then going, okay, I can do this. And then going through through the things that, I go into a room and people automatically think I'm the nurse, or think that I'm cleaning, or think that I'm doing these things that I, even after I say, I'm Dr. Rolón Rodríguez, I'm your provider today, they still come out and they're like, they haven't seen a doctor. And I was like, I was just in there. So dealing with all of that, I think in medicine, right, has been a big thing, but I think being a first generation college student and just first generation doing all these things, I think it has also, I've tried to shift it to a source of empowerment. Like, I'm doing this and I am, days are hard, but I still love it. And we are going to get through this. And there was this little girl that we walked past and we were wearing our scrubs. We were just going to go get food. And she didn't say, "Oh, mommy, that's a nurse." She was like, "Mommy, are they doctors?" And that for me just brought such light, because I was like, love my nurses. I need them. They are my life when I'm in the hospital. But, as women, we don't only have to be this. We can also be a doctor, a nurse practitioner. It doesn't have to be just because I'm a female, just because I'm Hispanic, I am, a little darker than you would expect, that I would have to be but like a nurse or the cleaning lady or these things, because those are the places where we see ourselves the most. Unfortunately, like if I see here in our hospital, I think they're working towards diversity, but, there's a lot of Hispanic individuals that work in the hospital. Where do you see them? There are cleaning staff, they are the ones that give us our food, and they're so needed, but they also, that's what people kind of, they stereotype. And so it has also, yes, a big source of imposter syndrome and kind of dealing with all of that and knowing that maybe I didn't come from privilege that others in my same field have come from. But I think it honestly gives me an edge because I know how it is. I know how, the process has been grueling. And I know that people that look like me are going to, little girls that look like me are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, look, she's a doctor. I can be a doctor too." Or, "Oh my gosh, she's doing this. I can do that too." So I've tried to turn it into a sense of empowerment because I think it's a big part of me, and it's a big part of why I'm where I am, and how I treat my patients. And so at the end of the day, it's been good for me.
I'm glad. I really enjoyed that. I like hearing about the next generations and how they see and how it influences what they want to become. So you mentioned a little while back that you went to a pre-med advisor here on campus and it was not a great experience for you. What other resources at UF did you find helped to guide you through your experience here?
Yeah, I ended up started going to the health science advisors instead. And there was one specific one, I'm like blanking on her name because she then like retired and stopped working there, but then her replacement was awesome too. And they were like, "You can do this. Like, who says that you don't, and it was so empowering because I just needed someone to say that I could, right? It was this thing of like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I think I really want to do this. And I think that, I'm a very religious person too. So I was like, I'm called to service and I want to do something to help people. And I love the challenge of thinking of being a doctor and like doing all this thing and working with my mind a lot. And I just needed someone to say, "Of course you can do that. This is what we have to do to get there." That's all. It wasn't like, "Oh my gosh, you're going to struggle. I don't think that you can do this." Like, that is the last thing that someone needs to hear, because I mean, sometimes it's, it pushes you forward. It's like, "Oh, you said I can't." Hold my drink. I got this. But having someone believe in you has such a spark. Like, just even that little thing of like, "Yeah, you can do this. Like, these are the classes we have to do. And this is when you would have to do this." And someone that actually did that. I also, Anthony DeSantis at the DOS, he always, like, there was a time when I went through like a midlife crisis almost, and I was like, "I can't be a doctor." And he was like, "Okay, let's look for any other things that you could do." And then when we went through the list, he was like, "You still want to be a doctor, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he was like, let's do this. Like, let's let's have you talk to someone about what you need to do. And let's put you in contact with these people. So you don't fear that process because you're not alone. And so I've had awesome people back me up, and push me when I didn't want to, when I was very tired. So that you just have to, when people are negative about those things, you just have to move on and be like, yeah, let me find someone that will provide me that spark, because you know that you have it in you. So.
You really sound like someone who would be a great mentor, Stephanie. I'm going to be honest.
I love that. I love mentorship, and I love, anybody that asks me any questions about this process and about, the struggles through exams. I always try to humble some people too, when they like look at test scores and they're like, oh my gosh, this person's not going to succeed. And I go, I'm your senior. I'm doing a great job at taking care of our patients.
Right.
I didn't pass my first time for MCAT, and I didn't get the greatest score the second time either, but someone gave me a chance and I took it and I ran with it. So
where did you attend medical school?
Yeah, so I went to Florida State.
Oh
no. I tried to go to University of Florida and I didn't get accepted, and that's totally fine. And I think that you end up where you need to be, regardless of whether, it's our, northern rival. But yeah, so that was and I'll be honest, that was the only medical school that I got into, and it was through the bridge program. And I said, I just needed one acceptance. You just need one letter. And so I went, and through my bridge program, I found such amazing more mentorship, more support. We were a small group of 13 of all underrepresented minorities in medicine. And it was such an empowering place to be, because regardless of whether we had to go through this like grueling process to get to the more stuff, that, we would complain about all the time. It was nice to have that group. And to this day, we're still very close and still talk about our experiences and try to, help each other out. Like, oh, I have this great resource. Do you need it? And just having that camaraderie. So, but yeah, that's where I went to med school.
Did they have any resources for you as a first generation student at FSU that you maybe took advantage of and went with and worked with, or just anything connecting you to other underrepresented groups? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So throughout the bridge program, that is something that we were really inspired by doing something like that, because most of us were first gen. And so that was really big. I went from, being surrounded by first gen at UF to then now having my small little tight knit group that we wanted to go into the same thing. And we were all going through that same struggle with standardized testing, with being the first in our family, having our families not understand that process that we're going through, and sometimes having to hide those long nights and, going in a corner and cry, not being able to tell our families that, because then they would be worried that we were not going to make it. So we did a lot of stuff. So I personally did a lot of stuff with the Latino Medical Student Association. And then we also had the Student National Medical Association. And with both, we had a group of then underrepresented minorities in medicine that were in undergrad that then we'd be paired with, and we'd have kind of that mentorship, and they could ask us questions. And so, yes, we definitely kind of wanted to do that. And the really cool thing about the bridge program is that, once you do all these classes, but then your second semester, you actually go teach. It's called sorry, I don't know where it went. The STRIDE program. And that was a pipeline program. And we would go teach elementary, high school, and we would talk about medical stuff and, the medical field. And then that way we could start telling people, showing people that, we look like you and we're doing this. Like, this is something that you can consider, and it's totally doable. It's hard, but it's doable. And so that was a really great part of that program that I really enjoyed, and, you know, kept me in my roots throughout the program, throughout the stuff. Yeah.
In talking to future generations, what would you say to someone maybe 10 years from now who just got accepted into the MFOS program?
Congratulations. This is going to be the best time of your life. I would say take advantage of everything and anything that comes your way. The people that are there, they are going to be your biggest supporters. They are going to push you, you know, farther than you think that you can be pushed, and just hold them tight and keep going forward, and don't look back. Don't look back like, you know, going back, but do look back. Always remember to look back and help people come up just the way that you did. So enjoy your time and spend the money wisely. You do get a lot of money in one big sum, and sometimes you're like, I've never had this much money ever. So financial literacy, it's important.
Yeah, obviously you've graduated, so you have the advantage of hindsight here. Did you realize the impact of a program like MFOS while you were here, or did it become more meaningful to you after you had graduated?
I think I always really appreciated it, and always thought about who it brought into my life. But I think, I think, again, hindsight is 2020. So even if you appreciate it while you were there, you graduate and you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I came out of college debt free, with amazing mentorship, people that, you know, saw something in me, you know, saw a spark that brought me here. Like, wow, what a privilege, what a blessing, to have that. And so I think everything really kicked off. You know, I always was involved. I loved school and I loved my teachers, in high school. But I think when I got that letter, and went into that program and did not see myself struggling like I thought I would, because I was ready to, you know, have to struggle through school. That was such a meaningful thing for me, that really stayed with me. But yeah, afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, you know, because the rest of the stuff, I had to get loans out, and I was like, wow, the MFOS program really made a difference in that sense too. Like, wow, I didn't have to worry about this. I didn't have to get loans. So definitely just continue to appreciate it throughout the years.
You've described yourself as a very outgoing person a couple of times in this interview. Did you have any experience that maybe changed the way you viewed yourself or your own purpose while attending UF? And was MFOS involved in that in any way?
Yeah, I think there were two things that really changed that. And I think it was, one, having my own mentees. I kind of seeing that process through their eyes, their own experiences. I mean, there were a lot of other people in the MFOS program that had it 10 to 20 times harder than I ever did. And I think that it was such a humbling experience too, to kind of hear their stories, and me being in that group as well. You know, yes, I struggled. Yes, we had all these things, right? But everyone's story is different. And so I think that really changed, and kind of seeing myself in a place that I could help people, in a way that, you know, even the smallest questions that you are always so scared to ask, and like, this is a dumb question. I'm like, no, there's no dumb questions. Just ask, and don't be afraid to ask those questions, because the worst thing that someone can say is no, or just answer the question. And so that was a big thing. And then, you know, I always come back to the DOS because it really changed my life in ways that I can never truly explain. And it's also, again, tied to MFOS. Like if I didn't, if I wasn't a mentor, I wouldn't have been helping with interviews for the MFOS mentors, and I would have never met Dr. Anthony DeSantis, and never got my job there and found really my little family away from home. So everything really had been connected to MFOS, and to this, to this day, still kind of think about it. And Leslie is always like, "Hey, Stephanie," and we always catch up, and it's just so great, such a great part of probably the rest of my life is going to be.
So is Leslie the only person from MFOS that you really keep in touch with, or are there others?
There's others. I mean, I feel like medicine, the medical field and the medical training has been very difficult to keep in touch with everyone as you want to. But I catch up with Leslie ever so often. I catch up with Anthony ever so often. We still very much, it's kind of those friendships that you don't have to talk to them every day to know that you can always come to them and be like, "Look, like I have a question about this, and could you help me in any way?" And they would always have their doors open for that. There's also a lot of just like 2000, people that graduated in 2013 that I still very much like, we keep in like touch, like, "How are you doing?" And, "Oh my gosh." And, even if it's just through social media, just seeing how, what amazing things everyone's doing and how cool that is. Some of my sorority sisters were in MFOS, and I still very much keep in touch with them. So, yeah, it's kind of people that regardless of how much you talk to them, they'll always have a special place in your heart, and we'll always have that in common. So still very much talk to them.
I only have one more question, and it's probably the biggest one so far, going to be the most difficult for you.
Okay.
Could you describe the first gen experience in one word?
That is so hard. Oh my gosh. I have like a few words in mind, so I need to just, I'm like trying not to make little sentences here.
You could do a phrase.
A phrase? That'd be so nice to me, Caitlyn. Building a path, I would say. If I could just use 3 words instead.
Give me 3 words.
Way. I don't know. I'm trying to like come up with one, but yeah, because sometimes they like say like trailblazer, and I feel like that's such a fancy word. But I think, yeah, just building a path for those behind you. Being being okay with doing things for the first time, and being unapologetic about it. Yes, no one in my family has ever done this, but who says I can't? And, tell my cousin she can too. And, continue that legacy through my family, making an education not a privilege, but something that we expect, an expectation, or something that you always think about regardless. Like, an education is not for everybody. That's just how it is, unfortunately. In certain things, people can do that. But knowing that, it's an expectation, something that they can ask you about, and nothing to be scared of. So
that was a great one.
Thank you.
That's all I have for you. Do you have any thoughts that you've been dying to share that I didn't cover?
I think you did a really great job at asking all those questions that I was like, "Ooh, yeah, let's talk about that." And no, I think I'm really excited to be a part of this, and I really appreciate it. I feel it a privilege to be picked as, one of the people that got interviewed. This program has meant so much to me, and did so many things. It's kind of funny because I have pictures of my first time at the president's house, my first year, and my last year. And I have a picture with Bernie Machen and his wife, and just kind of seeing that trajectory and that big change, and what this program has really, done for me throughout those 4 years and even beyond. is really cool, And I am just excited for this program to go on and change the lives of more people in the next many years. So I just hope I can soon make a better paycheck so I can start helping out and give back. That's like the goal.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, I didn't even think to ask you about how, like, if you had any plans to participate with MFOS in the future. So you plan on being like a donor?
Yeah, I that's something that I've always kind of thought about in the back of my head. I've as when I became a resident and I started getting a paycheck, anytime that Leslie would put something on, I try to, if I didn't forget, because my mind is very all over the place sometimes, but every time that I got the chance, even if it was a small amount, just like trying to pay it forward, because that's what this is about. People deserve to experience this program just like I did. And if I can make even just a small bit of a contribution to that, I would love to do that. And so I just every year just expect, hope to be able to provide a little bit more. So, but yeah, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Caitlin. I really appreciate it. And I get nervous and laugh a lot. So I hope that this was okay.
No, it was perfect.
Yay.